Welcome to the Divine Soul Journey Evolved podcast, your space for all things awakening, healing, and consciousness shifting. I'm Stephanie Jameson, psychic medium, author, spiritual and heart-based business mentor, here to help guide you through the incredible, sometimes wild, yet always transformative journey of spiritual evolution. Together, we'll dive deep into thought-provoking conversations, perspective-shifting insights, heart-awakening moments, and reflect on conscious relationship growth. This podcast is designed to be a safe space for awakening and evolving souls, a place to inspire, motivate, encourage, and let's be real, at times may even trigger you into the next version of who it is that you're being invited to become. If you're feeling the call to step into your highest self and embrace the magic of some serious transformation, you're in the right place. Because soul growth and evolution is meant to be beautiful, empowering, and yes, despite how it may feel at times, even fun. So take a deep breath, set the intention to open your heart, and let's dive in. Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you here. And as you and I talked about on our little pre-interview, I adore you and I adore your story and I love everything that you have to offer and the energy that you bring to the world. And I know that you call yourself a trauma thriver. And I feel like with what we're going to talk about today, you were just the absolute perfect person to bring in and talk about nervous system regulation and what that entails when we're kind of learning how to trust our intuition and embrace the unknown, which is not always an easy thing to do. So I kind of wanted to, before we dive into that, who are you? What's your backstory? And I'm just kind of curious if there was any type of catalytic event that led you towards tapping and where you're at now. Where you're at now and what's led you to be where you are on the path today.
Yeah, so my path, thank you so much again for having me. My path is not linear, like so many of us. And my story actually starts back in 2008 when I was hit and run over by a car. And that led to severe PTSD and chronic pain, which started out in my left hip and my right ankle and wound up kind of in every crevice and nook and cranny of my body at a certain point. And I went through all of the Western modalities and Eastern modalities to try and heal myself. And that led me to find EFT tapping. And what I found with my physical healing and the healing from the PTSD was that it wasn't actually about the physical pain and the PTSD, that surface level issue. It was about everything that was underneath the surface. It was about the emotions, the feelings, the actual event that happened, being hit by the car. It was about all of the lawsuit stuff that I had to deal with. It was about how I was feeling about moving through all of that at such a young age. It was about the dreams that I had for my life that I thought I was going to have to let go of or redefine on some level. It was about the fear that I felt around all of that. And I didn't want to feel any of that. So as a good New Yorker, right, I suppressed all of that because that's what we do. And what I found through tapping and through other modalities that I was finding was that I had to dig underneath the surface and I had to move through all of those layers to let that energy that I had suppressed actually come up so it could come out and resolve on its own. So it wasn't about the surface level thing. It was about everything underneath the surface. And then fast forward to 2017, when I found myself in close to $13,000 worth of debt. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? And I remembered, I was like, when I went through that car accident and all of that physical healing, it wasn't about the surface level issue. So this debt is not about the money, the surface level issue. It has to be about something deeper, all of these other layers. So how do I figure out then what are these other layers? So I started diving deep into money mindset and figuring this out. And what were my family money stories? And what did I learn about abundance and scarcity and who I'm allowed to be in the world and how I'm supposed to show up as a woman? Like, what are those rules? Can I use my voice? Is it safe to be all of myself, completely authentically me? Who am I to ask for money? So as I started digging beneath the surface in this area, and my program underneath the surface was a lot of lack, a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear. And my biggest growth edge was learning how to expand rather than continuing to hold on so tightly to every single dollar and cut all the coupons and budget and be a good girl and just get smaller and smaller and smaller, which is what society and the patriarchy and religion like teaches women to be in either overt or not so overt ways. So as I was digging through these different layers, moving through my money story, of course, I used the tool that helped me move through the PTSD and the chronic pain, which was tapping, because that modality really helped me give myself permission to feel the feelings and the emotions that were around all of those stories that I had learned, and help me tap into feeling safe in my body to start to go bigger and to start to expand and to start to take different actions in the world that seemed completely counterintuitive to me, like going to get a massage or like going on a vacation when I still had debt. And like weirdly, like, you know, while I was paying off the debt, I took a trip to Costa Rica. I bought a new to me car. And that was the year that I paid off the debt. And I was like, what just happened here? What were the dynamics that allowed that to happen? So as I started to expand, I started to realize that I had more value to offer the world. I started to understand my value in the world, and that I had something that people would actually pay me money for. So I started making more money, and I didn't even realize that it was like all happening at the same time. But then, you know, I wound up paying off all that debt and created this business. And I was like, I want to take what I've learned from this physical healing journey and this financial healing journey and help other people with the same thing, because this is stuff that I don't really hear talked about in financial circles. Like, it's not the most, you know, talked about topic of looking at like your family money stories and the religion of your youth and like who you are allowed or supposed to be in the world. Like those aren't conversations that I see actively happening in money circles. So that's kind of how I got here. And now I help other women move through these same kinds of issues to help heal whatever their financial situation happens to be.
I love that. There was so much that you just included in there. And I feel like we could have 5 podcast episodes talking about all of that. But one of the things that I'm hearing here is that your trauma, leaning into your trauma and leaning into your shadow, which is something that we are so needing to do on the spiritual path, has led you to understanding your uniqueness and cherishing the transformation that you bring to the table, and really leaning you into that trauma thriver label as well. You know, and that's something that's so huge. I'm just curious, very quickly, for those who are not familiar with tapping, how does tapping work? What's one of the main things that it does that can help you not only spiritually and emotionally grow, but physically grow as well? How does this work?
Well, tapping is a mind-body tool. And what it does is, so what we're doing while we're tapping is we're actually tapping on different meridian endpoints, the same points that they use in acupressure and acupuncture. And while we're doing this, we're saying different words and phrases related to the issue that we're trying to move through. And what that does on a physiological level is it sends a calming signal to the amygdala in the brain to turn off fight or flight response, or what I call freaked out brain, and turn on what I call peace brain, and what Harvard cardiologist Herbert Benson calls the relaxation response. So when we're in the relaxation response, we feel calm, we feel centered, we feel grounded, we can make better decisions. We can see the forest through the proverbial trees. We have, like when we're in relationship to money and peace brain is turned on, we're not feeling anxious. We're just taking the numbers and the information in as information and then making an informed choice moving forward based on the exciting vision that we can see now, because we're not so clouded and shrouded in the fear that freaked out brain was bringing up in us. Because when we're in freaked out brain, we're all over the place. We're anxious. We're like all the circuits are going off. So tapping really helps to ground us and bring us into the present moment. And it also helps us to find those limiting beliefs and the ways that we sabotage in a way that I found like no other modality as of now that I've found can actually do that. So it helps us make connections and see where we've made faulty connections about what we think is possible for us or why we can't move forward, or what might be in the way of us in our dream.
Wow, I love that. So in short, it helps control those cortisol spikes.
That's right.
And shift the narrative.
Exactly.
And help you reprogram. It's a great grounding exercise that brings you to be more present and basically stop spiraling.
All of those things. And it just opens up a whole new world. Little bit by little bit, it's not like this overwhelming, you're making all these changes at once, but it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, I wasn't hitting send or starting the business because of this thing that happened in the past where this teacher said this, or my dad said that, or this event happened. And I shrank and I didn't want that to happen again.
Yeah. I love that. I know that tapping has helped me drastically over the years. I've had to break some serious patterns, generational trauma for my family, my own karmic wounding, my own lessons. And as I've leveled up from, version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and even the version that you're seeing today, we'll get to this in just a moment, but some of that old trauma has come back up. And I know that tapping will bring me back into the moment, and I go back to, it's all good. Everything's working out for me. This opportunity wouldn't be showing up for you if you weren't ready for it, type of thinking.
And I love that you just said that, because like our stuff and our wounds, like they don't just vanish when we tap. It just helps us move through that moment. And then, our fears can kind of become like whack-a-mole, where like you whack one down and another one pops up. And it doesn't really matter where you are in your journey. Like our fears are almost always the same at every part of our journey. It's like, who am I to do this? Is it safe to go bigger? What are they going to think? Who do I need to be? Like, what's the identity shift that needs to happen? And it's almost always all the same things at every single stage. It's just like a little bit of a different voice based on the circumstances that you're dealing with.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that once you have evidence that you've done it once, like you can clearly keep doing it again and again as you continue to grow and evolve.
Right. Yeah. Well, that leads me to the next thing that I want to talk to you about. And one of the reasons that I was very excited to talk to you today was, how has trauma kind of shown back up for you on your journey, specifically related to, you were recently involved and experienced the LA fires. And I can only imagine what type of cortisol spikes you went through, the narrative that was running through your mind when you were being guided to leave your home. The old trauma that comes up from not just the catalytic experiences that you've had, but childhood, relationship trauma, whatever it is, you go into that fear-based spiraling, and you're in worst case scenario. I don't care who you are and how much work you've done on yourself, that kind of comes back in and your old trauma comes up. And the reason I want to highlight this is that I work with a lot of men and women who, as they've grown, and I've experienced this myself, we go back and we see some of that old trauma come back and we're like, whoa, I thought I healed that. I can't believe this is coming back up. It's been 7 years since that. It's been 10 years. It's been 15 years. So I'm just kind of curious, how did you regulate yourself through that situation? And did you notice some of those old patterns come up?
Yes. And before I share more of my experience with that, I remember spiritual teacher Carolyn Mace. Are you familiar with Carolyn Mace?
Mhm.
Yeah. So she shared a story one time about she was in a hotel and she was in a shower, and the door was like, it was like a weird door, and she turned on the shower and the water was scalding, like it scalded her, and she couldn't get out of the shower, and she freaked out, and she had a moment of like sheer panic, and she was like afraid for her life, kind of a thing. And she said that ever since that happened, she has to leave the shower door open a little bit because that has never actually gone away. And it's like and then she was talking about people who have gone through a quote unquote more significant trauma, and how, it doesn't necessarily go away. It's always kind of like in the back of your consciousness. And it's something that you have to be a bit more vigilant about than maybe the person who hasn't gone through something of that nature. So I think there's a level of compassion and understanding that if you have gone through a significant trauma is really so deeply, deeply important to bring to your experiences, especially when you get re-triggered. So I was very lucky. I live in West Hollywood, but the fires were basically on either side of me, in the Palisades and in Altadena. And I opened that fire app on that Wednesday morning, the first full day of the fires, and I saw everything was red. So like fires to my left, fires to my right, fires in front of me, and fires behind me. And I didn't really know what anything meant on this map. All I saw was red, and I saw all these like little fire icons everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, and my first thought was, I am trapped. And that I was like, oh, okay. And I know enough about myself now to know that when I feel like my life is in danger, I'm going to have a bigger reaction than, say, my neighbors. And some of my neighbors were like totally fine. And I'm like, trying to hold back the tears just because of the fear that I'm feeling. And I'm like, all right, I got to be a little bit more gentle with myself today because I understand what's happening. Like the good thing is that I have the intellectual understanding of what's happening on the physical level when something like this happens. So immediately I was like, I need to take care of myself. If I need to watch the news all day to know what's going on play by play today, that's okay. If I need to go downstairs and talk to my downstairs neighbors who are like cool as cucumbers and so incredibly sweet, I can do that. And I did that. And I was like, can I just sit on your couch for a little bit? And they're like, of course. And they like made me coffee and gave me cake. And I was just like, this is so nice. And in the meantime, I'm not beating myself up. I'm just noticing. And as the day progressed, I'm trying to like get myself back to center. And I didn't even have the wherewithal to tap, if I'm being honest. When I'm too jacked up, like it's just, I'm like, I'm jacked up. And that's a moment of like, it's an emergency moment. So it's not quite the time for me to like try and calm myself down if I don't yet know that I'm safe. So I went through the day and I realized that I was very anxious. And so I had reached out to my friend in San Diego to say, hey, if things get worse here, can I? And she's like, of course, like, don't even think about it. Get in your car and just come down. And I was like, thank you. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to yet, but thank you. I appreciate that. So I went out and like, I ran some errands. I filled up my gas tank. I got some like emergency things. And when I came back, I got out of my car and I smelled fire in the air. And I was like, okay. It seemed everything was still seemingly kind of far away from me, but the winds were still whipping. My body was like completely jacked up. I have a dog, I have a small dog. I'm like, I'm worried about my dog breathing in this air more than myself. And I'm like, more than anything, I want to honor my anxiety, but I also want to take care of my dog. So after I got back, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get in the car and go. And whether this is like me being over anxious or whatever that story is of like, you should kind of just suck it up or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm just going to honor where my body is right now. And I'm going to go because that's what I know that I need in this moment to feel safe.
I am just going to take a quick second here to interject and say yes to all of that, because one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn being a trauma survivor, and I love the term trauma thriver, is that I've had to learn over the years how to offer myself so much compassion and grace. Because the second I'm triggered based on my traumatic experience, I can easily go from this confident badass who knows her purpose, who helps empower other men and women and awakening souls on the path, to scared 17-year-old child, to scared 10-year-old in like a second. It can happen so quickly. And I've had to learn, and it sounds like that's kind of what you had to do, was to just simply talk to that kid, that version. So a lot of the men and women who I coach, I teach them techniques on how to, really establish a bond with that kid within and parent them the way that they either deserve to be parented or that they need to be talked to in that moment. Like, hey, it's okay, you got this. What do you need in this moment? Oh, okay, you need a Coke? Great. You need to sit down and watch a Disney movie? Great. You need
Yes.
to sit down and do whatever we have to do to let that kid within know, like, hey, it's okay. And it's okay that you've, in your mind have taken 2 steps backwards from where you thought you should be or whatever. Right? Because we have to offer ourselves the same grace we would if we saw a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old or a stranger on the street having a panic attack. We wouldn't beat them up. We'd be offering them so much love and so much compassion and so much grace.
Right. And that is like the key to moving forward is like, the more I'm in this work, it is compassion. It is kindness to oneself. It is honoring yourself right where you are in any given moment. And when, not if, but when you have that freak out moment, can you just be with yourself? Can you honor what you need in that moment, whether that's a Coke and a Disney movie or a book or a walk around the block or a drive or to snuggle with your dog or whatever that is. And you just honor that in that moment rather than like trying to force yourself to be uber productive or whatever you're trying to do in that moment. And it's like, that's not going to help, or like beat yourself up because you're feeling that and you don't think you should be feeling that. It's like, no, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this because like I've been through some stuff in my life. And for me, I know that what happened the day of the accident is that I was doing something mundane. I was walking across the street to get to work. And then boom, I thought I was going to die. And so I've had recurring nightmares about similar circumstances where it's like, it's always, the circumstances are always different, but it's like, I'm doing something mundane. And then all of a sudden I'm literally about to die. I had this dream hundreds of times, probably at this time, at this moment. And so on the day of the fires, I was just, I'm like in my apartment working, just doing regular stuff. And yet I'm like, am I safe? I don't know if I'm safe. Am I going to die? I don't know if I'm going to die. Is LA still going to be here tomorrow? I don't know the answer to any of that. So in order to honor where I am right now, I just need to get the out and get to a place where I feel safe with people that I know and love, and trust that that's the right decision for me in this moment. And we only have to deal with the next right indicated moment until we get to safety. Because it was like a moment by moment, breath by breath, like, what do you need? Just relax. I couldn't even, like, normally when I'm on a road trip, like, cause it's like a 3-hour drive. Like I would listen to an audiobook and I'm like, I can't focus. Like, there's no way I could focus on something right now. So I turned on Glee radio. Cause I'm like, what's the happiest, like most joyful thing I could put on right now that's going to soothe my nervous system? Well, that's Glee, obviously. So I listened to Glee for 3 hours driving down to San Diego.
I love that you're saying that. There's times where I will drive through Orange County, LA, and I'm so triggered by the traffic there. That's a whole nother story, but I'm so triggered. I will literally turn on meditation music And I will listen to that while I'm driving through traffic just to calm my nervous system. And this is something that I also teach the people who I work with as I say, okay, in this moment, you're triggered. Which way now? What's the next step? And if it's moment by moment, you're winning. Just trust in what she's needing, trust in what he's needing. What are they saying to you? If you need to go sit on the couch, go sit on the couch. If you need to put on Glee radio, girl, that's it. The first step is regulating your nervous system first and foremost. You don't need to know anything else above that or beyond
and
that.
the universe isn't going to tell you to do anything else because it knows like all she can handle right now is Glee radio.
Yes.
All she can handle right now is get on the couch with a glass of water.
Yes.
And then we'll give you the next instruction. Yeah.
Yeah. And that a lot of people don't know, and we won't get too much into this, but a lot of people don't realize that, I've worked with a lot of people who they don't realize that they have PTSD.
Yeah.
Or they don't realize that, they were conditioned to believe that their trauma wasn't valid. Yeah. Or that that's just the way mom was. That's just the way dad was. That's just the way the family is. That's just the way Uncle so-and-so is. Just get over it, especially men. That's a whole nother story. But, so a lot of people just go, well, they fight that. And when they hit their awakening process or they're being asked to evolve, they don't know how to get past that because that regulation, that nervous system regulation can't happen.
It's a very big awareness when you realize the enormity of some of the things that have happened and how that's shaped your worldview and your life. And that can be like, it can throw you off center. Like I didn't realize that you could have PTSD, and this seems silly now saying it out loud. I didn't know that you could have PTSD from being hit by a car. I thought PTSD was for people who had gone through a war or a natural disaster or something like that, something huge, but not a car accident. And it wasn't until I didn't know for 2.5 years, I was walking around with severe symptoms of PTSD. And finally, I worked with a therapist who was like, you have pretty severe PTSD. And I was like, what? I think so. And then she, started explaining things to me, recommended some books, and one thing leads to another, and then all the light bulbs go off, and I'm like, oh my God.
I went through a very similar experience. And I think that that's society. That's the narrative that society pushes, that in order for you to even experience something traumatic, you have to be killed at war. When in all reality, there's other experiences that we all get moved through that are ridiculously traumatic, right?
Yeah. Really small things can induce PTSD.
Yeah, very small things that are going to dysregulate your nervous system.
Right.
Yeah. And then I think that there's a stigma as well. A lot of people have this interesting take on, well, I don't have that. And so I've noticed that as well, where they think that maybe something's wrong with them because they've experienced trauma or PTSD, or they dim themselves because they don't want to even start to look at.
And then they suppress it and suppress it.
Yes.
And suppress it. And then it starts to,
bubble up
in other ways, whether that's like through outbursts of emotion or a physical symptom or divorce. I don't know. It could be anything.
All the things.
Things.
Yeah. And that's what happens on the awakening path, is that you start to really have to lean into your trauma, which leads me to the next study. I feel like I could talk to you about that for forever, but we are in limited time here.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the cherry blossom study, because there are so many people who I work with. It comes through in readings, in coaching, my masterminds, all that stuff, where I'll be sitting there talking to somebody and all of a sudden they have an epiphany that the reason that they're experiencing this is because all the men in their family or all the women in their family have gone through this, and they're realizing that they're the pattern breaker, that they're the generational trauma breaker, that they are the black sheep in the family, or the one who is, whatever you want to label it. And they go, whoa, I'm here to break patterns. So can you explain to me what the cherry blossom study and how it affects our DNA?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And this also comes up in money work, where people realize that they've been running the same pattern as their parents and their great-grandparents and their great-great, and it's like, why is this happening? So the cherry blossom study, so they took a group of mice and exposed them to the scent of cherry blossoms. And when they exposed them to the scent of cherry blossoms, they would shock them. So eventually, over time, it became like a Pavlovian response where they would expose them to the scent of cherry blossoms, and they had, they were looking at their brain waves, and they realized that the fear response in their brain would go off simply by inhaling the scent of cherry blossoms. They no longer even needed to be shocked. So these mice had mice pups, mice babies, and they exposed the mice pups to the scent of cherry blossoms and realized that the mice pups also had an activated fear response in their brain when they were exposed to the scent of cherry blossoms, and not other scents. They did try other scents. And the interesting thing about that is that the mice pups were never actually shocked. So they have no lived experience to associate negatively with the scent of cherry blossoms. So that fear was inherited from the mice mom or the mice dad, or the two of them combined together. Mm-hmm. And this lasted, they tested, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 generations deep that they tested the cherry blossom study, but there have been some studies that go up to 14 generations showing that this generational trauma actually continues on in the lineage. So when you think about that in terms of your money, it's like, well, what were the fears that my mom, my dad might have had around money? What were the circumstances in their life that led to the beliefs and stories that they had about money? And then go another generation. Well, what was life like for their parents? When my grandma couldn't have a checking account, she, if she could, there were no laws against marital rape up until the 1990s. Women were subject to a lot of suppression. And
speaking of,
go ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I feel like this should definitely be noted since this is coming up. I'll use myself as an example. Coming out as an intuitive, as somebody who has spiritual gifts, and this big awakening that's on the planet right now. I'm like the first woman in my family that I'm aware of who's actually been able to trust her intuition, take action on her inspired ideas, and manifest what her intuitive idea has told her again and again and again. And I can only imagine the long line of women I come from who were burned at the stake, or who were punished or put into whatever. And so I carry that in me. I remember the first time I ever was guided to come out publicly to do what I do. And even though I knew that my intentions were 110% pure, and I was here to help people and awaken people, there was this very quote unquote illogical fear in me, even though I had never experienced this, that I was going to be persecuted, that I was absolutely going to be persecuted. And I had to have so much faith in God. I had to have so much faith in the universe. I had to have so much faith in my heart wisdom to know that I had this blueprint there. And I had to break a serious generational wound in order to do it. And I didn't know where it was coming from at the time. I do now. But I feel like that's another reason that we need to kind of lean into that wisdom around, and that trauma and regulating and knowing that what am I trying to say here? That fear that can just come out of nowhere is actually coming from within you.
Right. Is it literally that you had those fears? Of course you did, because first of all, you're being called to break that pattern. But that fear is literally living in your DNA. And what a gift that you have become to recognize that fear, to understand where it came from, and then to have the courage to break that and create a new line, essentially, like a new story for your family. Wow. It takes so much courage. Yeah.
So I really wanted to, and thank you for that. Very sweet of you. And I appreciate that. It took a lot of work. And despite the version of who people see today,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I ended up on the bathroom crying, in the bathroom crying, and on the
And I think
floor,
that's so important to say,
Mhm.
because as
Mhm.
we're breaking these generational belief systems, like it's painful. Like it's
Yeah.
so hard because those stories are so strong, and they're just here to try and keep us safe, right?
Mhm.
That those fears have been passed down because those fears kept our ancestors alive. So it's like,
Right.
how can I honor that? How can I honor the life of my ancestry, my lineage, and start to create new choices for myself moving forward? And
Mhm.
it's scary AF.
Right. And that's something to note as well. I mean, there's studies on this, and it's a whole nother podcast topic. But as you do begin to raise your vibration and shift your consciousness and open yourself up to a new storyline and really lean into your trauma, your DNA goes through an awakening and
Mm-hmm.
you actually heal your DNA line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of what so many people are experiencing on the planet right now. And I think a lot of people are kind of navigating and trying to understand, because it's a confusing process, because they're literally fighting themselves.
And most people don't have this language or this understanding of where these fears come from. And I think having the understanding of it alone can help you kind of break that cycle and just,
Yeah.
again, have so much more compassion for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay. So I could talk to you all day long. I know that you completely understand this and you get this. But to kind of sum all of that up is whatever mom, dad, grandma, great grandpa, whatever they went through, the trauma, that's in your DNA. It's in you and you're going to feel it. So if you have a quote unquote irrational fear about something, it's most likely has to do with the fact that that's in your DNA and it's something that you are, being guided to lean into, look into, and you would encourage people to kind of
Yeah.
embrace that.
And you can ask yourself, like, what were the circumstances of my parents' life, of my grandparents, my great grandparents' life that may have
Mhm.
contributed to the fears that they have? And are those fears similar or the same as my fears? And do my fears make sense in the context of my own life, and my life experience? And if they don't, this is a great path to kind of explore to see if
Mhm.
that might be coming up for you.
Mhm. So much goodness. Okay, well, we are coming short on time here. I wanted to see if there was a quick exercise or something that you would offer to the people who are listening when they are having a moment of just, oh my gosh, I'm going through a cortisol spike, I'm spiraling, I've done all this work, but for some reason I'm incredibly anxious today. I've got the heart palpitations going on. I'm not feeling grounded. What can you do? What can you say to yourself very quickly to get yourself back into a place of regulation?
My favorite tool when I am having a moment or a day like that is karate chop point tapping. So all we do is we tap on the karate chop point of the hand for 20 seconds and you just breathe. Because when we're in that anxious state, when the cortisol is increasing, it's really hard to access language. Sometimes it's hard to figure out even what we're feeling, to know like exactly what the circumstances are that are going to heal us. We sort of don't know, and we're in freaked out brain. So I like to tap on the karate chop point of the hand and just breathe for 20 seconds. You can close your eyes if it feels comfortable, and you do this every hour. And when you forget, you just pick it up and do it because you probably forget.
Mm.
But try to do it every hour for as much of the day as you can. And that's going to send that calming signal to your brain. It's going to help that cortisol decrease and get you back into peace brain, into that grounded state where you have access to more of your resources and your creativity and your clear thinking. So that's my
Mm.
tool when you're in a super anxious moment. And if anyone wants a guided tapping session, I have a free gift with my money mindset training, that you can get at theluckysoul.com/money training, where it's 3 bite-sized videos on how your money mindset is formed and how you can figure out what your beliefs and stories are. Then there's also a guided tapping session on going from financial stress and anxiety to financial peace. And there's actually 2 bonus resources. One is 21 abundance activating strategies and 12 things to stop doing right now if you want more money, which is a PDF of really practical strategies to help you get into abundance. And the other is 26 powerful money mantras to help you shift from lack and scarcity into abundance anytime you need to. So again, you can get that at theluckysoul.com/money training.
I love that. I was just going to ask you if you had any free gifts for everyone who is listening. So that was your intuition kicking in to let you know that you needed to mention all of those beautiful gifts. One thing I just want to say really quickly, I don't know why, but years ago, and this is something I actually teach to the people who I work with, it had to have been like past life wisdom or something coming through. I very nonchalantly started doing this to myself. I started tapping on my chest. And I don't know why, but to this day, if I'm feeling anxious, I literally will just do this. And I cannot tell you how grounded it makes me feel. And it reminds me, it's almost like I've created a new neural pathway that when this is being hit, like my parasympathetic nervous system gets reset. And it helps me so much. I'll do it in the shower. I'll do it behind, before a call. I'll do whatever I need to do here. And I'm just kind of curious if you can kind of take, what is this?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, this point, the collarbone point is my favorite point. I get the biggest release here.
Okay.
And it's really interesting. You'll often see people tap on points unconsciously, like they'll just like randomly like tap on the side of their eye, or they'll go like this, and it's like, oh, isn't that fascinating? And it's like, yeah, or like, and it's just because even when you put a little bit of pressure on those points, it helps that energy to move a little bit. So that is the wisdom of our body actually speaking to us. When we just start to do that and we're like, oh, that's so weird. Like I just started unconsciously tapping on myself. You'll also see, this is a little bit different, but if you're ever in a room with firefighters or first responders or police officers, and you look under the table, all of their legs are shaking up and down. And that's because there's so much energy running through their body trying to get out. And that's actually something that tapping is really, really helpful for moving all of that stuck energy. So our bodies are really intuitive creatures, and they're so wise, and they really will guide us back to wholeness. That's like what they're always, always, always trying to do. And I have learned that on such a deep level, especially with the physical pain, is that like every time I'm tapping or I'm meditating or I'm like working on it in a different way, I can feel my body kind of jumping in and releasing a little bit more and releasing a little bit more and guiding me to the next step to get to the next layer. It's really fascinating.
Thank you.
Body.
I appreciate that, because that is something I wanted to say really quickly, is that, there's some times where that intuition kicks in, your body wisdom kicks in, and you have no idea why you're doing it. I just remember 8-9 years ago, it coming up for me, and I was like, this just feels good. So I just kind of chalked it up to past life wisdom is what I did, and that my body was trying to regulate itself.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you again. I feel like I could talk to you forever. We'll have to have you come back on. Is there anything else you'd like to share as your own journey has evolved, or?
Oh, what do I want to share? Just that I think tapping on self-sabotage and giving yourself permission to go bigger, to expand to the next level, and not throw in a monkey wrench. I think it's the most important thing to work on consistently, because if we're not, so I shared this earlier on my member call, but my favorite / least favorite quote is that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So we don't tap once, we don't do this work one day, and it's like all of our problems are solved for the rest of our lives. It's like we have to bring a constant willingness and a constant awareness and a constant vigilance over our own experience, so that we can keep moving forward, not throw in those monkey wrenches. And when we meet an obstacle, we can get around it gracefully and with more ease and a little bit faster than we did the last time. So just being mindful of the ways that you might sabotage and preparing for that, so that you don't do it moving forward, and you keep the path nice and clear, so you can, have a shorter distance between you and your dreams.
Yes, beautifully said. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you, and we'll have you on again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you for joining us on Divine Soul Journey Evolved. I'm truly grateful to share this space with you. If you'd like to dive deeper, please visit divinesouljourney.net to check out private readings, courses, mastermind workshops, and so much more. Also, just a reminder to check out the links below for any free gifts mentioned during this program that are available to you as you grow through your next level up. Until next time, keep honoring the illogical magic unfolding before you. Trust in your perfectly designed evolution, and remember that you are being divinely guided always.